Why did I want to call it a smash in the dark? That's clearly not right. Is is there smashing in it?
Yeah, he breaks a lot of things. It's kind of amazing.
Oh yeah.
I can't even remember if that's the one where Herbert Lom comes into it, and might be the one after that. And oh yeah, when he comes in, it's just oh man, we're gonna have so much fun. We're gonna have so much fun. He's
Um
Chief Inspector Dreyfus.
yeah, well, speaking of having fun, welcome
Yes.
everyone to a new season, a new
Yeah.
enterprise in the history of Duncan and Bo Come Correct. I of course am come correct. With me as always is Duncan.
Yes.
And look, we were talking about this a little bit before the show. I'm so excited to not be horizontal
Yeah.
and sick. I'm glad that we're recording again. I know that we had to delay yet again, but
Ah,
it
but you
was
had Rona, like you
yeah,
had the Rona, so
yeah.
that's fine.
It was like one of those things where like morning of I was like I can do this, and then like as I was getting up and moving around, I was like, oh, I can't do this. Like
Yeah.
I can't be fun and silly and do dumb
Yeah.
voices and
Yeah.
act like I care about the Pink Panther.
Yeah.
Um, when all I want to do is just like lay in bed and whimper softly.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I like, but it's one of those things, all right? You know, we're going through one of those waves where like everyone I know has had
Like,
coronavirus.
yeah, like I have still somehow, unless like I said before, unless I've had it and the symptoms were mild on me, like really mild on
Yeah.
me, which is a possibility. I know some
Hmm.
people that have had that. I am one of the few people. I think I'm one of the few people in my family, in my circle of friends, in my circle of podcast friends who hasn't had it.
Yeah.
And this particular wave running right now seems to be picking off everyone else.
Right.
Like everyone
This
that
got the
hasn't had it,
stragglers. Yeah.
yeah, it's starting to work its way through them. So it's
Yeah.
either inevitable I will get it, or like I say, maybe I've already. But then my wife's the same. Like she's not had it, and we're like, well, maybe both of us are just like super immune. I don't know.
Right, you like you're the ones that are going to end up in the farm with Mother Abigail,
Yeah.
you know. Um yeah, I had it either, and I was, you know, the work that I do takes me out in public to some degree.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I am also now dating someone with kids who are of an
Yeah.
age that are just, you know, they're petri dishes themselves.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna get it, that, you know, this it's prime. But I would have expected that I would have gotten it before, but I never did. And I had the same fantasy of like, maybe my constitution is just so good that
Well, yeah.
coronavirus showed up and it was like, fuck you, and you know,
Well, I was on a stag weekend, and I think everyone got it from that stag weekend except me. I
yeah,
was at a gig, and I mean, it was a very very busy gig, and I'm very surprised that everyone didn't have COVID at the end of that. I did something recently, and people that were at that had COVID. So, I'm at this point, I think I might be a god, Bo.
right, yeah, yeah. I thought that too, and still do to some degree,
Yeah.
but just not about the coronavirus. But yeah, no, I got waylaid by the COVID,
Mhm.
and it like it wasn't ever super severe. It was a thing like last, as we're recording this, like a week ago Friday.
Yeah.
That night in particular, or that day, I was like, I don't feel so good, and then by that night, I was like, I really don't feel good. And I think I'm running a fever because I'm starting to get chills. And I
Yeah.
had to like Uber Eats or like get the delivery because I didn't have a thermometer. I don't get sick
Mm.
enough that I didn't have a thermometer laying around.
Mm.
And my girlfriend was like, you need to take your temperature because if you're, you know, if your fever gets to a certain point, you need to go to a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I don't have one of those. So I had to like Uber somebody to bring me a thermometer. And sure enough, I was running a fever. It wasn't crazy high. It was 101 ish. Hot enough, like I was running a hot enough fever that I did not feel good.
Yeah.
And but I had it through the weekend, and we were talking about this before the show. I still sound a little congested. I guess I still am a little bit,
Yeah.
but I'm fine. I feel good. Like that kangaroo I got out back, I started boxing that again for my daily workout. Me and the Roo doing, doing a couple of rounds. But the end result of it was like, oh, we had to delay recording yet again, which was a real bummer. Because in addition to that, Duncan, I don't know if you were aware of this, but I'm also going to school.
I did know this. Yeah, yeah.
And so, let me tell you about this astronomy class. That is a real pain in my ass. But yeah, so like in addition to being sick, like that weekend also was a weekend where it was like, okay, I'm actually gonna spend a few hours working on astronomy because I am not what you would call science inclined, Duncan.
Yeah.
My gifts lie in the larger realm of bullshit and essays. I'm an English major, Uh, so when people like want you to nail down an answer that's real and provable, that's where maybe my expertise starts to wane. But anyway, so I didn't get an opportunity to do that. But that's what I was doing. But before we recorded this morning, I was watching astronomy videos. So but I'm almost done. The summer classes have been rugged.
Yes.
I'm
But there's an end in sight.
Yeah. I'm done in about 2 weeks with all of this, and then following that, the next semester, my fall semester, when I actually graduate, it's 2 classes. They're both on Monday. It's a full semester. It's not like a compressed schedule. It's like, and they're both English classes, so I'm back into the realm of like just crazy makeup ups.
Yeah. Back at the coast of it, Bo.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're not even grammar classes. It's not even the hard part of English, Yeah, I miss I that's what I miss. Like as like one of my classes though is a history class, which has a fair amount of just like, oh, I can, write some discussion posts and that kind of thing. And killing it, Duncan. Killing it.
Okay.
I've got the gift of bullshit, and I wield it as much as I can. It's just again, astronomy is like my kryptonite, where I like, I can't.
What are you going to actually use it for, Bo? Let's be honest.
It's super interesting. Like I find it fascinating. That's kind of the catch-22 of it, is that I really enjoy the material, but my professor is Russian, and I don't trust her.
Because she's Russian,
yeah.
We get that. Yeah.
And so, but like the first couple of the first test in particular, I was like, man, I didn't do well on this test at all. But then like the midterm grades come out, and she's like, because of crazy Russian evaluation I use, you'll get A. And I'm like, great, that's fantastic. I don't know how you.
All of a sudden, I'm back on board with Russia.
Right.
Praise be Putin.
Right. Hail to glorious leader. That is right. Putin is son. And I was like, this doesn't seem all right.
This notebook's been changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the right textbook.
Yeah. Here's another thing that changed. Did I already complain to you about this? About the school textbook stuff?
You did, yes, you did. That was a big bugbearer. Yeah. They have to, like, things move on, Bo.
It does, but
like kids don't buy music now or movies.
What?
So why would they buy books?
Yeah, you're right. How you been doing though? I know you're working on lawn projects, but
yeah, when it finishes, my back garden is going to be fucking incredible. But
it is.
Yeah, once I get there though. So next Thursday this Thursday coming, sorry, it should be all finished. But I'm manually building a large steel monolithic black pergola. and that's that in itself. It's not been fun, and that's what I was doing just before. I was like building the pergola, praying for an astronomy class to swap for. But yeah, it was. I'm almost there with it, but it's going to look. It's going to look very Argento when it's finished. I've got all these hue lights. It's a brand of lights that are controlled from your phone via an app, and they're all neon colors and all the rest. So I've got them all set out the back, so it is going to look something like right from a Bava movie when I finish. But I just have to get there first. So I think that has been me, and obviously summer series is kicked off for Podcast Under Stairs. So there's a lot of stuff happening with that, which has been fun.
Yeah, I meant to. I will do this off the air, but remind me whenever we get close to doing that second episode.
Yes, I will do. I don't think you're in the back half, so for episode number 2, so we're fine for time. we're fine for time there. But yeah, I'll get that all sorted. But I think I've got 5 episodes recorded at the 10.
Oh wow, that's great.
So like I'm at a good place, and it officially starts on Monday. Like the first group of episodes will go out then. So and thus far, not that I want to brag, I think 90% of my picks have went through. So I am scoring relatively high this year. And the ones that I have went through that I was kind of against, couldn't give a fuck about anyway. There are years that I just don't care. Like my movies that I want already went through on the original run. So when it comes to a third pick, I'm like, yeah, you know, have whatever you want. It ain't getting anywhere on the list. I mean, so yeah, it's been good.
If I can make one small confession.
Uh-oh.
Prior to this conversation, I would have told you that a pergola was a flightless bird.
Well, read that essay.
Yeah. Oh, I can give it to you. You kidding me? I can give you 1,000 words.
Here's my 3,000 words on pergola, the flightless bird. That's a penguin, Bo. It's a penguin.
All right. So I don't know if I told you this. If I did, I apologize. Like I got the COVID scrambled brain where I don't remember what happened before. I don't understand anything of history prior to that. Speaking of history, though, so I'm taking a history class. It's like a survey of American history up through like Civil War and Reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, I was going to be a history minor, so this is really my wheelhouse. Like I'm familiar with this material to a large degree. I'm really interested in it. The textbook I think is actually well written and really fascinating. I probably would have read it. Without having to take a class and so forth. So when we first start the class, or when I first started the class, the professor is a little bit slow in doling out the grades.
Right.
Okay. So I was on a weekend trip with my girlfriend, and I'm having to check in here and there, like do some discussion posts and stuff like that for the class. And the whole time I'm like, why isn't she graded this? Like she's commenting on other people's discussion posts, and she's not commenting on my discussion post. And my discussion post kicks ass. And so it was a real like Lisa Simpson, like evaluate me kind of thing. And it was really my girlfriend's first peek into the broken psychology that I have, where I'm just like, I need someone to tell me that I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, validation.
Right.
That's why we podcast, Bo.
Yeah. I mean, totally. It's just, I need somebody to tell me.
We crave attention. I think that's what it is. So yeah.
Right. Somebody needs to tell me that I'm pretty and funny, and my professor was not doing that. But like I said, recently we had the midterms and stuff, or the midterm evaluations, and my professor was actually saying, like, I wish you had majored in history. You have a great analysis or a gift for analysis and stuff like that. And I was like, why couldn't you have done this when I was on vacation? Like, where was all this? I know. Pardon me. And my girlfriend rightfully was like, she didn't comment because yours is fine, and the other people's, she's trying to like direct and
she was spending her attention helping those that needed it. Bo.
Right. Instead of just like patting me on the head and telling me what a good Pagala I've been.
Oh dear.
You want to talk about some movies?
Yeah. There's yeah. I mean, it's not as if we've had lots of free time to do things for
You
the
know,
sense of things.
weirdly, that's the thing is I really haven't watched a ton of movies
Yeah.
recently. Although I think I got the COVID from going to see that Love and Thunder, the Thor movie.
Oh, right.
Uh,
I've still to see that. At this stage now, I probably won't even get to see it at the cinema. I will probably just wait off for
eh,
Disney Plus.
it's fine. It's if you enjoyed Ragnarok, you'll enjoy this. It's got some
Yeah.
funny shit in it, and that's all I wanted out of. But that's not what I want to talk about.
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, so let me talk about my good question mark. It's a movie that
Uh,
I just watched that I'm fascinated by, and I just want to talk to you about it because I don't know if you've ever seen it.
oh, right. Go for it.
All right, have you ever seen The Birth of a Nation? The
Yes.
1915 like 3 hour
Yeah.
long DW Griffith thing.
Literally, like me and Baz are about to do it as Baz's backdoor cinema. He picked it because he'd never seen it before, and he wants to discuss it because of its impact on the rebirth of the Klan in America, i.e., this is his look into real life horror that
Yeah.
he wants to cover. So yeah, like but weirdly, I had seen it before that.
Okay.
Um,
I saw it for the first time. Part of it, like I had to do it for my history class. It's part of a project I'm working on, but
yep.
I'd never seen it.
Oh, right,
And
right.
like I knew of it, of course. Like I'd seen clips from it and that kind of thing, but I never sat down to watch it until yesterday. Like yesterday was the first time I spent 3 hours plus
Yeah.
watching D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. And it's such a weird movie to discuss
Mm,
because it's like it's that Tale of Two Cities thing of like the best of times it was the worst at times because on
yeah.
one level the Birth of a Nation is the Rosetta Stone of cinematic vocabulary.
Yeah.
It's like the first movie that was like, oh, here is this larger narrative, and we're doing like it's the tale of these two families
Mm-hmm.
across the war and all that kind of stuff. And there's battle sequences that are like, this is really impressive for the time in which it was made.
Oh, yeah.
Impressive now, actually. Pardon me. And so there's that level where as I'm watching it, I'm kind of like jaw dropped at how effective it is as just
Mm-hmm.
from a modern perspective. Like this is a silent film that is over a century old.
Yeah.
And it's like this totally works. Like this movie as a movie,
Mm-hmm.
this all works. Like here's where you're setting up the characters, and even some of the performances, even though they're silent performances, I think Lillian Gish is actually surprisingly subdued in that movie
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. So there is that.
Yes.
Then there is the flip side of The Birth of a Nation where you're like, what is this movie about?
Yeah.
And on the one hand, again, this all seems like strangely contemporary because it is the story of two families who are sort of split by the Civil War in America and
Mm-hmm.
what the aftermath of that looks like. The problem that you run into with The Birth of a Nation, Duncan, is that the supposition made by the film is that once Civil War has ended, that black people just run amok in the South and terrorize all the good Christian white folks,
Yep.
largely helped by people from the North, one of whom actually says, we will destroy the white empire and create a black empire in its stead. And the hero of the movie is the guy who comes up with the Ku Klux Klan, which is
Yeah.
presented as nothing but a positive force
Oh,
in the
yeah.
film as
Not.
they go to rescue all the white, especially women,
Yes.
from the clutches of blacks and mulattoes. Particularly the villainous mulatto lieutenant governor who does everything short but of, twirling his mustache
Oh, yeah.
if he had a mustache. And that is equally jaw dropping as the technical achievement of the film because you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I understand times were different in 1915, But were they that different?
But that's
Maybe.
like, I think if you chart it back, though, I think in terms of like segregation to like a point between those of an African American persuasion and those of like a kind of white fucking puritanical nonsense
Mm,
persuasion. Things weren't actually all that bad. They were pretty. There was still to a degree in certain places in America like deep divisions, but things were actually starting to go on the upswing. And then that movie came out, and then guess what? Like everything regressed real fucking fast.
yeah.
And it's just so. Is that you are right? I think it's as weirdly as it's an incredibly poignant movie, mostly because of the last 15 years
Hmm.
in America, where things have sort of maybe even slightly longer than that, since maybe about 99, where things have started to slide back down a very visible divide along party lines. And even beyond those party lines, where you just see like this kind of a very kind of fundamental Christian, which it's like at this stage, 2022, you would have thought a lot of that nonsense would just be fucking gone. Or that a very kind of evangelical swing towards absolute fucking nonsense.
Yeah, and
And
and very, very ethnocentric,
oh
very,
yeah,
very wide. Like the whole replacement theory stuff and all that stuff is kind of baked into this sense of, it's the story that white people of a certain political stripe, especially, have
yeah,
been told of, like, hey, by the way, the America that you knew and loved is disappearing, and you know,
yeah.
and the black people in the North are gonna make your,
But it's like,
you know,
yeah, I think it's so bizarre that like the America that you know and love is disappearing. Is such a I don't know. I think like I've always said to me the country should march forward and always march forward and never stay complacent or like frozen and what like because that's how you get a North Korea, right?
mhm.
Like when things all freeze in place, one leader, one ruler, that's when shit gets scary. You've got to keep moving forward. People that pine for yesteryear are people that like genuinely only remember the good things that happen
Mhm.
at that time and never remember the bad things. Like, and there's plenty. Like I've said, like I think as well when well, we never used to have this level of unrest. Yes, you did.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, see if you open a textbook, go back. Like the word there will obviously fuel prices and the crisis and all the rest that's happening just now is kind of swaying things up. And like as a result of that, you'd see certain news publications like linking back to like the UK riots in the 80s and the 70s and like all these things. And you see on such a mass scale. And I look at that and I look at now and I'm like, things are fine just now. Like,
Mhm.
like there are tens of thousands of people on the street, like industry, everything's striking, everything's like the country is ground to a halt. And I look around and I'm like people are still working. Like so as like regardless is every I think every generation wants to make everything happen feel like the most important or the best or the worst or whatever to define that era that you live in. And interestingly, linking back to the history thing is that's what makes history so fascinating.
Mhm.
It's also the reason you can't just whitewash history out. That's the importance of it because when you go back, it really does give you context to evaluate where you are. And it's not just repeating the same mistakes, but it's to sum up exactly. I think sometimes people look at like the worst aspects of history as well, which is a noble in itself. But you can only chart how far a society you have moved on, progressed, and bettered yourself by being able to compare where you came from.
Yeah.
And in a lot of respects, that movie it does show you where you have traveled from, but the scary thing is it also shows that there appears to be a swing back on that pendulum happening at the moment, which isn't helping anyone, nor will it help anyone.
Yeah.
Um,
And well, and the thing that's interesting about even the time that Birth of a Nation was made was
mm,
there was an attempt at the time that Griffith was influenced by
Yeah.
to sort of recontextualize Reconstruction after the Civil War and say, oh, it was like the South really was the victim of Northern opportunism and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, I don't know that that's totally without merit, but it's certainly not the rule. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I'm sure that happened, but also it was the South kind of coming to terms with its legacy and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And so there were, like, Griffith wasn't alone in the kinds of things that Birth of a Nation espoused and presented. It's
Mhm.
just that when you put it all together like that, and you can't deny that, like, oh, this was made by someone who has very racist ideology.
Yeah.
And like and but and also to your point of, the, like, well, we need to go back to the old days when it was better. And the
Yeah.
question that they don't ask themselves is, for who?
Yeah.
It
Well,
was better for you, but not women, not black people, not minorities, not.
this is where we're stuck in the UK in the moment. Like, we're obviously in the throes of Brexit, because, and I don't want to generalize, but like, on paper, statistically speaking, England wanted to leave the European Union. The majority of Scots didn't. The
Mhm.
majority of people in Northern Ireland didn't. Um, and like, where we are, and it's mostly because of the narrative of, like, back to the old days where we controlled our borders and, all the rest. The result of this is that there is now a massive, massive, massive shortfall on skilled labor in the UK. And we're talking, we're like, 2 years into Brexit?
Yeah.
Massive shortfall, huge shortfall. And all these waiting times at the hospital, like can't get a tradesperson to do a certain thing and all the rest. Like, I wonder why that is. The reason it is the freedom of movement that you had in the European Union, which allowed skilled workers from other countries to come to this country to work. They're all gone.
Yeah.
And guess what? People in England, once again, without generalizing, a lot of them pretty fucking lazy. So, you know what I mean?
Maybe
Won't take a job.
what you would
Yeah,
call unskilled.
yeah. Well, it's not even that unskilled. Like, just they receive a degree of benefits for not working, and as a result, don't see the need to work, or, that's not the job for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's that sort of level where all those jobs were being picked up by someone else who was eager to live in this country, work, and pay taxes. And that's where we are now. And it's absolutely fucking laughable, that's the position it's in. And, well, there's genuine surprise. Like honestly, genuine surprise. And all that information was made available at the time. It's just, wouldn't you like it to be the way it used to be?
Right. That wasn't the
Yeah.
stuff that was on the sides of buses when it
No,
was being
no, no,
advertised
no,
originally.
wasn't. But he's gone now, so
Man,
um,
we'll jump to the next movie here in a second, but boy, Boris Johnson piecing out of his job was one of the most, like, graceless exits I've ever seen of a political figure.
did you see his last prime minister's questions? His sign off was "Hasta la vista, baby."
Yeah.
I shit you not.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Is easily in recent memory, and I'm going back like 50 years, easily the worst prime minister that there's ever been in the UK. And the reason he got removed wasn't for the lying, wasn't for like the misinformation, wasn't for all the fucking corruption, and there's loads of that will still come out. It wasn't for breaking COVID rules several times and being fined for it. The only sitting prime minister to be officially fined by the police.
Mm-hmm.
For breaking the law. Only one. Wasn't all that. It was because he promoted willingly someone into his cabinet who was known as like a sex offender is the
Yeah.
easiest way to do it, like sexually assaulted other men. And
And
he knew about it beforehand and did it. And when it got leaked at first that he knew about it, he denied about it, lied, and then all this information came out, said he wasn't lying. And then tons of information came out saying he was fucking lying. It turns out that was more credible. And that's why he left. Not all the other stuff he's done.
And I like his response when they were like, we have, all this proof that you knew about this ahead of time. Oh, I forgot that I knew.
Right, he seems to forget a lot of things, which is what you want in a prime minister. Just like someone that's really forgetful about really important things.
But
he's just a fucking dickhead, man. I hate him. I absolutely fucking hate him.
There's a little bit of hopefulness though, because in addition to like at the same time that Boris Johnson is exiting stage right, there's also, like we've had all these hearings here in the States about what happened on January 6th, and it's pretty, unless you're just closed to the idea that, Donald J. Trump could do any wrong.
Yeah.
Unless you are just living in that world where you're just not going to believe the testimony of people who were there at the time.
Yeah.
Then there's just no question like, oh, he was, if not legally at fault, at least morally at fault for what happened.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's probably gonna do him in, like at least
hopefully. Like the thing is, these guys seem to skirt by because people just don't put their faith in facts anymore. They think that everything comes with an agenda, and that's sad. That is sad. But yeah, I don't know. We'll go through. This is I'm trying to think now. It was David Cameron, and then Theresa May. And then Boris Johnson, and now either Liz Truss, who is a fucking moron. Can't stress that enough. If you ever get a chance, listeners out there, Google Liz Truss sausages, where she's at a conference and she's very excited to be talking about British sausages. And I'm like, yeah, she could be leading the country and formulating war policy. Her or Richie Sunak, who was Boris Johnson's chancellor, who is, I think he is in the top 10 richest people in the UK.
That's always who you want, is somebody who's really got their finger on the pulse.
Yeah, who at the moment thinks that we haven't went far enough on taxing poor people. So that's neither one of them chosen by the British public but that's what we do here. And everything's blamed on the previous government because people have forgotten that the last 12 years have been Tories in government. Like it's mind-boggling. As like if I could, and I know it upsets certain friends of mine, but if I could, I would take a jackhammer out and saw my country right off the end of England. And it's getting worse. Like this is why I can't look at news like stories or anything anymore. Like I genuinely have a liking for English people, and then I see the worst of it on TV, and then I just want away from it. So
all right, well, that was my
that was your good question.
Good,
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, just a movie that I felt like was worth having a conversation about, because it's fascinating. I encourage people, like, yes, it is dreadfully racist. Like it is truly a historical artifact of racist ideology of the time. But it's also, if you're a movie fan, it's kind of required viewing just because it is so significant in the history of filmmaking. But anyway, so that's my good/terrible movie. But what about you? Where do you want to start?
So I've been doing a lot of documentary watching because I'm doing a lot of movie watching for summer series, which I've been my palate cleansers documentaries. There's a great one. I use the word great and it's absolutely repugnant. But there's a great one on the FLDS up on Netflix at the moment, a 3-part on what was his name? Jeff
Johns?
No, it's the Mormon folk. Fuck! It was so great. I've forgotten his name.
Yeah.
Wayne. Can't remember. Anyway, you'll find it while we're doing this.
I'm fact checking.
Yeah. So it essentially charts the what they would class as the last prophet in the fundamental.
Jeff Warren.
Jeff
Warren
Warren,
Jeffs.
that's it.
Warren Jeffs.
Warren Jeffs, right?
All right. Sorry.
I had the two things there. I just couldn't put them together. Also, strange name. But yeah, like, so basically his rise to power from his father essentially dying, and he was part of the fundamental Mormon movement, which was all about like as many wives as possible, like all the wives. But it charts his, and I knew the name, and I knew I knew he was in prison. I didn't know why he was in prison. And this documentary opens your eyes in a way which is absolutely fucking terrifying, which is all about pedophilia and child abduction and grooming and yeah, just like absolutely horrendous shit. Like absolutely horrendous shit. But it's a really, really, really well made documentary. So it charts over three episodes, essentially his rise to power from his father dying, and then his kind of consolidation of power before his essential kind of last movement, which is the creation of a compound in Texas, because that's where you go to build a compound, which was called Zion. And he would start moving people out there, but he slowly started removing the parents, so it was just kids that were there. And yeah, absolutely horrific. But you get like lots of people who essentially left the church, coming through interviews and talking through different points, and you chart their experiences as well as subsequently their kind of fractured relationships with their families, who some of them are still in the church and, you know, are forbidden to talk to those that have left the church, and just a very, 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 very bizarre situation that, once again, this is recent times. He went down like a couple of years ago. That's when he finally got arrested, because there was recorded evidence of him having sex with a 12-year-old and telling her it was holy.
What was the Netflix also was? I think it was Netflix that did that doc. Jimmy, the British TV personality.
Oh, Jimmy Savile.
Jimmy Savile. Yeah, I watched that not too terribly long ago, and
it's harrowing.
Yeah,
it's harrowing.
The same kind of thing of just like, what, you know, like
worse with Savile because people knew.
Yeah, or
people yes. Knew, and people were enabling, not those that were part of a religious group.
Yeah,
who thought this guy was the prophet, i.e., was the word of God. And that's why they're, you know, they go along with that sort of thing. These were people in the industry who knew about it. And I remember I grew up watching Jim will fix it on the TV and Jimmy Savile doing these various bits and bobs on there. And he was already like hugely established as a TV personality at that point, and he'd been doing it forever. He's contact with the royal family, like absolutely horrendous shit. Yeah. Like horrendous shit, and none of it came out until he died, which to me is the coward's way out. It's all right, a story now he's dead. No, get him now when you can do time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It you know,
let's destroy his legacy now that he's dead. No. That does nothing to the victims.
Yeah.
So
that's that's a documentary I will probably end up watching anyway, because there is something about the rise of a cult leader.
Yeah, it's an excellent documentary, and very much worth your time. And they don't leer over the pedophilic stuff, but what they do go into detail is just how warped the sense of religion was at the time, that it was just seen okay to marry 14-year-olds to 60-year-old men.
Yeah,
that to me is like, just like,
right.
Can't quite wrap my head around that at all. And we'll have 20 wives and like just that stuff. I mean, yeah, and the fact that it is illegal in America to be a polygamist, but no one gets arrested for it, and I'm like, surely that's to me that feels like an easy crime to prove.
Right. Are you married to him? Yes. Are you also married to him? Yes. Well, I think we got you dead to
Book
rights.
him, Dano. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like there's literally feels like it'd be very, very easy to prove. And you want to know how you want to know how you kind of, I'm not saying like remove completely, but really stamp down on ideas that you can get away with things by making arrests, Bo.
Yeah.
See if you have a law that you don't prosecute on, what's the point? Like there's no deterrent there at all for anyone not to do something. And it turned out, I think one of the things that came away was one of the, it was in Salt Lake City or something, on the original run, one of the police officers who ultimately had been questioned a few times by the media. Like it turned out that he had like a child bride or something. That's why he wasn't pursuing things. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, Jesus Christ. So yeah, it was good though. It was really, really, really good. But so, I sometimes like to revel in watching things about the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
So it was really good. And so was that John Wayne Gacy documentary. People haven't seen that on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I did watch that. That's really
Yeah.
creepy.
Yeah, really creepy. The end, the last 5 minutes where they're talking to like surviving family members and flashing up the photos of you forget how many people he actually murdered. Like, and the fact that they're still, even up until last year, they managed to identify one of the 6 remaining unidentified bodies in there. It just like, whoa. I'm glad we're getting all this like harrowing stuff out before we talk about a nice old romantic romp in the
Yeah,
Pink Panther, Bo.
a farce. All
What
right. So here's my bad / good.
Oh, like
Or
you're like blurring the lines here.
that's what I do, Duncan, is
What are those lines?
yeah, non-binary movie watching. That's my thing. No, I finally caught up to a movie called Broadcast Signal Intrusion.
Oh, I love this.
All right, so I mostly did.
Oh, right.
Okay, but I'll tell you the problems I had with it, which are kind of minor in the grand scheme of things, but it would have made the movie like one of my favorite movies. But so Broadcast Signal Intrusion, for listeners who don't know, it's about a guy whose wife has disappeared, presumed dead, is not handling it real well. And he works as basically an archivist where it's transferring like old tape to DVDs essentially, for like on television station, like news reports and television shows and anything that was broadcast. And as he's doing this, he runs across what's called a broadcast signal intrusion, which is where a pirate of some kind basically pirates the signal and puts up a video. And a lot of times it's real juvenile stuff of like, we control the vertical and, down with capitalism or whatever. And in this case, though, it's this like hella creepy image of somebody in kind of a doll mask.
Yeah.
With this crazy audio laid over it. And it's just like disturbing and vague, and
it's very Poughkeepsie tapes.
Very Poughkeepsie tapes. Yeah. And so naturally, he starts to dig into it a little bit, and this leads to this kind of obsessive hunt for who did this. There were other of these intrusions, but only 2 that were kind of proven, but there was a rumored third, and and it's basically about this guy who just has lost his bearing in terms of the life that he thought he was going to lead, and now he finds himself in a position where he's kind of hunting for meaning. Like like ultimately it's sort of a story about somebody who thought he had life figured out, and then realized like chaos and randomness can happen to you, and then what do you do in the wake of that? And rather than like look to human beings and support to help him, like he goes to a support group but he never says anything, and the one person in that support group that is like, hey, how about we go for a drink sometime and we'll watch a movie, and he's just like, oh, I can't do that sounds like human contact and that's not my jam. This has a lot of things that I like in a movie. One is like a mysterious videotape, or in this
Yep.
case, like this signal intrusion and the hunt to find that. There's a lot of Zodiac in this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like all of that, and this kind of hunt for a potential killer. And the thing that I don't like about the movie is I think it's a little long. And I think
Okay.
I think there's just one too many instances of we found this thing that leads us to the next thing that leads us to
Yeah.
the next thing. And I know that's kind of the point, but also after you go, slight spoilers, but this will be vague enough that I'm not giving anything away. But once you go from, here's this random telephone number to here's this storage facility to
Mm.
here's this other thing to here's this other thing, that by the time you kind of get to the end and start to get, some answers essentially, I was like, I wish we had gotten here 15 minutes sooner.
Yeah. I can
um
see that. I can see that.
and I also think that the very end of the movie, like the last shots of the movie, I was like, I get it, but also, I wish that you could have left this in a different place,
Yeah.
and I think it would have been as effective, if not more so, to kind of hammer home the idea that this is a dude who has gone too far, that like he even if he's gotten some kind of answer and potentially done some heinous shit of his own, that there's no there's no life beyond this for him, that this is,
Yeah.
like, and we kind of got that with the dude who he runs into, who's been on the hunt for this for a long time. And
Hmm.
I wish, yeah, I almost wish you had just paralleled that, of
Yeah.
like shown him in that place later,
Yeah. Yeah.
where you're like, oh yeah, of course, this led him down this deep dark hole. That all said, I was still really engaged by the movie, and I really had a good time with it. I just, like, I would make certain tweaks to it
Yeah. Yeah.
just to make it a better movie, but I was
Hmm.
still like, there's a scene where they talk to this guy who, is paying the bill on this storage facility that kind of is part of their link of clues. And I was like, I more of all of this.
Yeah.
This is that Zodiac thing I love so much, of like, here's a guy that may be more of a threat and you don't really
Yeah,
know.
you don't like you've like that moment where that kind of cold clarity washes over you. Like, does anyone actually know I'm here? And why am I here? And I don't actually really know this guy all that well.
Yeah. And also,
Yeah.
what is that sound they were hearing? Like, is somebody else
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
point where I was like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Where it's
Yeah.
like, somebody else here with us right now. And yeah, like, that stuff is really good. But it's totally worth it. If you haven't seen Broadcast Central, Signal Intrusion, totally worth your time.
Mm.
I wish it had been this much better, just so that I would love it instead of really like it. And that's kind
Yeah.
of where I walked away from it. I was like, I really like that. I wish I w- you know, it kind of falls into that like cigarette burns territory for me as well, of,
Yeah.
we're on the hunt for, or even in the Mouth of Madness to some degree, even though it doesn't go
Yeah,
quite that long.
there's a bit of that. There's a bit of 8mm in there.
Yeah.
Nick Cage movie. There's a bit of even one that I mentioned. I keep mentioning Murder, Death, Creatum, about that idea of just someone who like finds that he has just like lots of that and starts hunting something which he starts to think is a lot grander than it necessarily might be. And where that actually leads him. And the story itself is more about there is a mystery there, but it's equally about what the character's actually trying to find within himself, if you know what I mean, or what he's missing, which is driving this forward. So yeah, I thought it was really good. It did make me, because it came out the same year as Censor as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
Censor's a superior
much yeah,
film.
like
Yeah.
that's the thing, like in a year where Censor hadn't come out and just like absolutely fucking hit a home run with it, I think like I would probably be a bit higher on Broadcast Signal Intrusion, but very much like yourself, I found the ending Like I've seen that ending done in several
Yeah, yeah,
movies
yeah.
before. I think that's where I was kind of hoping, because I'd seen him at least try different things throughout the movie, or at least his own spin on it, that I thought by the time we got to the end, I would get something that was a bit more unexpected than it was. Which brings me to my bad.
Yes.
This doesn't do me any joy saying this, but I checked off season.
I
Um,
have seen this as well. So yeah.
Yes. The Mickey Keaton, who I like as a director. I really like him as a director. He did that movie, was Darling, I think it
Hmm.
was, which was kind of his take on Repulsion by Polanski.
Yeah.
And it was really, really, really good. I really liked that. He did a movie called Psychopaths a couple of years ago as well, which was really good. But he's done a couple of movies that I don't like. He did that Pod movie, which I didn't like, and he did was it Carnage Park or something,
Yeah, yeah.
which was okay.
But this has
And
Jocelyn Donahue from
yes,
House of the Devil,
yes, it has her. It has
Jeremy
Richard.
Gardner.
It has Jeremy Gardner in a cameo. It's Richard Brake, who is
Hmm.
playing Richard Brake. It has Larry Fessenden, who no doubt dies, although he must die off screen, because I can't remember seeing him die. But you know, it has a relatively good cast. It has a bit more money than what he's played with before, and the first half of the movie, notwithstanding a silly reason to get someone back on an island, the first half of the movie I was really into. It had a kind of almost a Silent Hill
Hmm.
sort of vibe with it. This mystery of everyone's acting weird on the island. I wonder why that is. And I was totally into that. And then the back half became the most predictable, ponderous. And I described it as lazy Lovecraft,
Hmm.
because the ending in particular just felt just a little bit too much like, oh, of course, the ancient ones. Oh, all hail Cthulhu. It just became a little bit kind of. And then the very, very end of the movie was what I kind of thought was going to happen 5 minutes into the movie, which like irritates me when I can Babe Ruth a movie like right at the start and be like, oh well, this is the final shot. And yeah, so I came away with it like heavily underwhelmed by the whole thing overall. Thought the performances were good, thought the script was okay, thought the first half of the movie really, really well put together. The last half of the movie was a paint by numbers horror movie that I've seen done so many times before. And I'm kind of over the, you were always the caretaker sort of moment in a
Yeah.
movie. Like I'm over that now. I'm like, just do something else, please. Anything else? Like even make it a dream. I can live with it being a dream. Please don't like add that. So that did not work for me at all, which was a shame because there was a lot of elements I thought were put together really well. But I'll probably never watch it again. So
Oh, no, 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 no. That was a movie that I think, like, as soon as it was finished, I felt like I had seen that movie not just once but 100 times.
which
And
is weird because I in the past he's done things that feel familiar to other works, but he's done a really interesting element. I really went in hard on the character study,
mhm.
which I think is the kind of fascinating bit, and we didn't get that at all in this movie.
Yeah,
Which made me wonder why. Made me wonder why, because he wrote and directed it, so he can't hide behind the well, it was someone else's script or someone else's story. This was his vision, and it just was a bit meh.
yeah. I think maybe because not so long ago I watched Dagon again, and
There
it's
was
like,
huge elements of that in there. Yeah,
right, except it doesn't have nearly the sloppy fun of
yeah,
Dagon,
yes.
and it's like this is a very somber, very self-serious movie that doesn't have any surprises, like you said.
Yeah, and all the cameos are of like all the
Hmm.
kind of smaller roles. Like Joe Swanberg's in it. Joe Swanberg from Your Next plays who is a great actor who fucks off 10 minutes into the movie and doesn't come back.
Yeah, Melora Walters plays the mother
Yes.
from,
Yeah, yeah,
Magnolia and a million other things.
yeah,
And yeah, it's really frustrating because there are lots of ingredients there for a really good creepy horror movie,
yeah.
and it becomes a completely predictable, ultimately kind of dull horror movie, which is
Like that last half is just where all the action's
yeah.
kicking off, and I could not care.
Hmm.
Could not care at all. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I also, you know what I hate? I
What
hate
else do you
like
hate?
I absolutely hate movies that knowingly have a character break the wall between the movie and the audience by kind of looking at the camera and smiling,
Oh, right.
which she does right at the end of the movie, and there's no other precedent in the entire movie for that. So fuck that. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Like have something somewhere else in the movie where it's been done before, but that knowing wink at the audience is what? What's that supposed to indicate? That she's happy where she is, or like because I got that from the scene before, or like she's there because she was always supposed to be there, and like it's like I don't get what that's supposed to be other than a massive middle finger to me, like personally.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Well, shall we turn our attention, Duncan, to the project at hand,
Yes.
which is of course the beginning of our journey into the world of the Pink Panther.
Yeah. This is like I picked this. I picked
Mm-hmm.
this. I can't remember exactly how it came up in conversation, but I like through conversation with you, we realized really quickly that you've not seen any of these all the way through.
No.
You may have seen clips, and clips just won't do, Bo.
I feel like
Not
I had
go.
seen
It's not go.
mostly this.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, that's probably why you didn't go much further
Yeah.
than this. This is not like we're gonna be specifically following the Pink Panther through all its iterations, its many different versions of Inspector Clouseau. But to do that, you have to start back in 1963 with the Pink Panther,
Mm-hmm.
which brings us the glorious combination of Blake Edwards as the director. Blake Edwards, who was famously married to Julie Andrews from the Sound of Music for many, many, many years. But yeah, so you've got Blake Edwards directing. He brings in one Peter Sellers as a small bit part character as this bumbling French detective called Inspector Clouseau. That turns out to be the big success of this movie, and then it spawns like see where you see how where we end up with this character from where we start. It's like how the fuck did we get here, and why were we not here to begin with? So we have to get through this one to start really getting to the stuff that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And it is a big old 1960s farce.
Yes. And so, yeah, 63 is when this premiered. Blake Edwards originally had Peter Ustinov in the Peter Sellers role.
Yeah, so Peter Ustinov, for those that might not know out there, Peter Ustinov about this era was known for playing Hercule Poirot, which makes a ton of sense as to why you would have him as Inspector Clouseau. So he's like, it would be inverting the performance that he would ultimately become very, very, very famous for, as because we're on our 10th Poirot now. It's Kenneth Branagh currently playing him, but Peter Ustinov, very large, rotund fellow. I actually think his wife might be in this movie.
Yeah, I think that was the thing, was that he was going to be in the movie because his wife was in it, and then he ended up getting bounced out. I might be impugning him, but I think it was because he was drinking.
Peter Ustinov liked to drink. A lot of actors at this time period like to drink.
So Ava Gardner was going to be in it. She got bounced because of a little drinky boo. And then Capuchin was hired. And then Peter Ustinov's wife was like, no, this is gonna suck if Ava Gardner's not in it, so you need to get out. And so Peter Ustinov withdrew, and that's the point where Peter Sellers stepped into the role of Clouseau. And so, all right, it's got an amazing cast.
The cast is ridiculous,
yeah,
right? Like across the board. This is just all like this is like a kind of crossover point of kind of like elite level British acting and up and coming American and foreign actors all meeting together here. You have like it's very difficult, even though David Niven is like he's getting on by this movie. It's very difficult not to look at this guy and feel like, I would shag him. You know what I mean? He's that fucking charming.
He's getting a little up there by the
Yeah.
time this movie rolls around.
He's still got there's a twinkle in his eye, but like when
Yeah.
you see like Robert Wagner is so fucking young in this movie.
That's the thing. Robert Wagner steps in and is just like, you are the handsome son of a bitch that ever was.
Yeah. It's so bizarre to see. It's like that way when you watch like if you've ever seen the Raven, the Corman Poe movie, and you're like that looks like a really, really, really young Jack Nicholson. Wait 1 second. That's a really, really, really fucking young Jack Nicholson. And the guy is like not only is it like there's faultless face, like not a mark, not a blemish, just a really, really, really attractive looking guy. Like just like and kind of Robert Wagner's the same. Like you forget because you everyone kind of came to him maybe a little bit later on. You forget that he'd been around for as long as he had, and there was a time period where it was like, oh yeah, he's the eye candy of the movie. He's the young David Niven in this movie. He's like he's the next generation coming up. So he's great. He's perfectly cast in this one. Peter Sellers, who, if you believe the rumor and innuendo on this one, Peter Sellers was very body conscious in real life. He'd always had a bit of weight about him. And went into a strict regime of basically trying to get himself in shape for the role as Clouseau because he wanted to be very slight, kind of leading man esque, but was still ultimately bummed out that he was cast amongst, someone like a Robert Wagner who like you can work out all you want, but you don't have cheekbones like that. So like the genetics just ain't there. So.
And also probably led to his heart attack.
Well, yes.
Sellers had a heart attack right before this movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But anyway, all right. So the scale that I proposed for this.
This is you've already put this on Facebook, and I think this is it's kind of great. I think unfortunately it's going to stifle this movie, but it's going to benefit like subsequent ones, like the one after this, A Shot in the Dark. If it does not score high on the Bow scale, then I say the Bow scale is warped and wrong.
So I proposed laughs per hour. How many times in an hour of film am I laughing? And we'll reach that at the end and discuss it. But that is the scale because again, these are supposed to be lighthearted romp comedies, and this is as you say, I haven't seen the other ones, but this is unique in that this is like an ensemble cast movie and it's not just focused on Clouseau.
The one cat. Yeah. Clouseau is, but like for all intents and purposes, when this movie was envisioned and made, Clouseau is a backseat character, not the main character. The main character of this movie is David Niven. He's the guy you're supposed to be following in this one as the Pink Panther. Well, as in the thief, the jewel thief. Who's going to steal the Pink Panther.
And so, all right, so this thing kicks off with a scene that it takes place years before the later events of the movie, where there is a young Princess Dala is her name, who is being given a diamond, a jewel, called the Pink Panther, which, before I ever saw this movie, which happened later anyway, I was like, oh yeah, the Pink Panther is that cartoon. It's like, oh no. The Pink Panther is just the name of this diamond.
Yeah.
And
the cartoon spun off this. So they had animated credits for this movie because that's what they wanted. They wanted that and that became so popular that the Pink Panther that with the theme song and all the rest comes from this. A lot of people think it went the other way around and the cartoon was first. No. It comes from this. So
yeah. And so the titular Pink Panther is just a flaw in the diamond itself that kind of resembles a panther. And so but it's this Maharaja giving his daughter this gift and explaining here's what the Pink Panther is.
Yeah.
And then we go to credits, which is the cartoon Panther.
Yeah.
And also the real star of this movie, as far as I'm concerned, short of Peter Sellers, which is the amazing music.
Yeah.
It is so groovy that bass of just boom, boom. Yeah. It's so good. And even when it's used in that movie, as soon as you get that, you know, bum 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 bum
Yeah.
bum bum, you're like, oh well, this is now. I feel like I'm watching a movie.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a great theme. It's a great theme.
yeah, and it was like the opening cartoon bit and that music was maybe my greatest memory of this film. And so, like later on, when it gets into all the snow bunny shit, I was like, people are skiing in this movie. But all right, so let me start off with a question
Yeah,
in the opening scene, because it starts off like David Niven is the would be star of this movie if Peter Sellers had not been in it.
yeah. He plays a character called Sir Charles, and Sir Charles is the famous Phantom Thief.
Yeah.
And what he is, he's a cat burglar who is renowned on the world, who leaves a calling card of his glove with his initials in it wherever he goes. And so that's he's the guy I believe he's the guy you're supposed to be following. And I think the intention, maybe on some level, was a handing of the torch if they were going to continue this over to a kind of Robert Wagner
Right.
sort of the younger Phantom moving forward. But like I say, the like you can see there's I adore Peter Sellers absolutely, and there's just that you can just see just little things early in here where you're like that. Oh, there's something here. Like I can just imagine being very excited about that. But yeah, that's the
All right,
that's the kind of idea.
yeah, and it opens on him swiping something and kind of coming out the window of this place and going down a
Yeah,
rope. My question is, when his buddy lights the rope
yeah.
to force him to go back inside, was his buddy just screwing with him?
I have no idea.
I didn't understand. I was like, what is happening here? Where David Niven is just like, well, I've done it. I've stolen yet another jewel. Oh,
Yeah,
damn it, Frank.
yeah.
You've lit the rope on fire.
Frank has ghosted me.
You're right.
I don't know.
This is because
I
I slept with your wife, isn't it, Frank?
don't.
I get it. I get it. This is all on the up and up.
I don't know. I don't know. It always feels like he's done because once again, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but like in the later movies, Clouseau has an Asian manservant who he pays to attack him periodically
Sure.
with martial arts weapons
Uh-huh.
when he's least expecting it. So he's always at the ready, and it leads to a lot of hijinks. But there was a part of that that feels like this is the kind of genesis of the idea that this guy who's helping, so Charles, is like almost he said to him, he's like, this stealing this jewel is going to be really easy. At some point, just throw me a curveball, and this guy's taking it literal, like, well, I will burn the rope while you're on it then.
Yeah, I just wish someone had explained why this guy is doing this.
It doesn't explain it. And I would love to say that like future films will go back. No, they don't.
Yeah, it's fine. But I started this movie with a
Confused.
question mark over my head. Like I'm a Metal Gear Solid guard, blink.
Snake?
Yeah.
Snake!
Looking around, there's just a nondescript box that nobody could possibly be in.
Yeah.
So all right, so we cut from that over to the handsomest man on earth, Robert Wagner, who is graduating from college. He's at like a photographer's place.
This guy's literally the talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah.
Like, he's like everything he's doing is a grift. Like everything he's doing is a grift.
Right. And as he's getting this, one presumes, fake picture of his graduation put together, some guys show up looking for him, some thugs, and it's a real like, hey, where's Robert Wagner? We're here to break his kneecaps. And his photographer pal that he is apparently paying to take this
fraudulent photograph, because he clearly did not study for 4 years at university. No. He's just in at the end. So
yeah, he explains what he was up to, and it's a pretty good explanation. But yeah, so he's just like, hey, photographer guy, tell these guys to beat it, will you? And so he ends up kind of escaping from these thugs. So we have introduced our two main,
For the most part,
protagonists,
yeah, yeah,
kind
yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah. For the most part,
And so we also get an introduction to the wife of, we will learn, the wife of Inspector Clouseau,
yeah.
Simone, who is
Simone.
also dodging some people after her. Only in this case, it's the cops, because she is having this clandestine meeting in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
So we know as the audience that she is up to no good.
Right from the off.
Yeah. And so we, after introducing all those characters, we finally come to who will be the most interesting character in the movie, which is Inspector Clouseau, who is
One of my favorite introductions to a cat. He spins the globe and then puts his hand and it goes fucking
yeah.
right in his face.
So he's kind of bumbling from jump, and he's like, "We have to find the Phantom."
Yeah. Once
And,
again, like focus on the accent because the accent in this movie is okay. In
yeah, it's
subsequent
not
movies,
crazy.
the mispronunciation of things is deliberate and meant for for jokes. But in this one, he's clumsy, but the character's still played relatively straight.
Yeah. And his wife comes in at this point. We're like, "Whoa, wait! I just saw you being
Yeah.
followed by the police. You're up to no good." And we, as the audience, realize like, "Oh, he is hunting her."
Yeah.
But we don't know. Or like, he doesn't know that, but we know that. So he is, not only is he a bit bumbling, he's also a little dumb.
He's not a great cop.
Right. So then we catch up to Princess Dala, who we last saw as a child,
Mm-hmm.
getting this diamond, and she is now played by Claudia Cardinal.
Yeah. Who
Um,
is absolutely stunning.
just gorgeous, yeah. And she is now in exile because her father has died. There's been this military takeover of the country that she was in charge of, whatever it was,
Yeah.
like the moon of Pandora or whatever. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And so she's skiing around, and then David Niven spots her because he is also at this resort, and he's like, "Well, hello, Ness."
Yeah.
And so he skis after her, and there's uh who else is there? There's Sir Charles is there. There's
Yeah.
Dala. There is, and we'll get to everyone else who shows up.
Yeah.
But
She's got like a manservant, guy called Salud, who's there as well, who basically is looking after her, and making sure she's okay. Um, and at this point, I think that's everyone's essentially all the characters you've been introduced to are all going to converge on this ski resort,
yeah,
which is basically where the movie takes place.
yeah, in Cortina d'Ampezzo is the name of the place.
Yeah.
And anyway, so once after kind of following Dala around, when Sir Charles goes back to his hotel room, he opens up a medicine cabinet, and there's a note inside that says "Kidnap tomorrow" with an exclamation point. So you're like, aha. So some evil shit is about to be afoot, and David Niven is like, yes, kidnapping. And so the kidnapping in question is that Dala's manservant has her little dog.
Yes.
And somebody comes along and just swipes this dog. It's
Yeah.
like, yoink. And David Niven is there to be like, why, Princess Dala, someone has stolen your dog.
Yeah.
And
I will chase him down on skis.
right, allow me to help you, princess. And so he chases after the dog, but he ends up crashing into the sleigh.
Yes.
And takes a bad spill. And so not only is the dog not rescued, but he has in theory injured himself. We'll find out that's
he's now got an injury he has to big up here. But this is all part this is all part of his now master plan to ingratiate himself into her good graces. But what it's probably worth saying, Sir Charles has the international reputation as what we would call it in Scotland, bit of a shagger.
Yeah.
So like, which apparently everyone in this movie is totally fine with. Like every story is
Yeah.
about how much pussy Sir Charles is getting. Like every single from everyone.
Well, yeah, one of my favorite bits in the movie is where, basically he has a conversation about like, hey, you're in your 40s and you're doing nothing but laying pipe
Yeah.
instead of like settling down and having, a wife and kids and all the stuff that a respectable person would do. And he's just like, I have no problem with any of this. This all sounds great.
I'm gonna go back to my room with the giant cabinet that I opened, just full of booze.
Right, and
Holy shit, that's a mini bar I want, though.
let's see which woman shows up in my my room tonight for me to shag. Um, but and then so Clouseau and his wife Simone show up, and he
Yes.
literally runs into the litter,
Yeah.
that Sir Charles is being carried on after his accident.
Yeah.
And in pretty short order, we realize, like, oh, Simone and Sir Charles are hooking up.
They're in cahoots.
Not only are they in cahoots, they're in kabed.
Yes, yeah, but and they like she's booked the room right next door to his with an adjoining door, which I've never understood that. I've never understood that thing. I'm assuming it's for families when families stay abroad, but the idea of an internal door which allows me to go into someone else's room,
I think it's creepy. But I understand. Like, okay, so like on those cruise cabins.
Yes.
It makes sense because you are going to have, like, here's a room for the adults, here's a room for the kids.
100%.
You can kind of move back and forth. But a hotel, different animal, I think. You just don't want that. I don't want somebody accidentally walking into, I mean, you keep it locked and everything, but
yeah.
A good hard kick.
Yeah.
It's like the movie Sneakers where there's the new electronic lock that's unbeatable, and there's that great gag where he's like, all right, well, how do I get past it? And you just see Robert Redford going, okay, and then okay, all right, and then okay, got it. And then he just kicks the door open. It's such a great gag, but it's like that happened. That's a hotel room door waiting to happen. I don't want any part of this. But yeah. So Sir Charles gets an invitation from Princess Dalla to go to dinner.
Which he thinks is one-on-one, though.
Right. And he also, as he's getting this invitation, like he gets up out of bed and we realize, like, oh, you big faker, your leg is totally fine. This is just part of your insidious plot to be like, well, if she thinks that my leg is broken, perhaps she will think that other parts of me are in need of service. It's like being blind. If one leg is broken, the penis is twice as good. That's why Mozart was so good at composing. I don't know. That's probably not true. Did I tell you I was taking a history class, Duncan?
You did, and it's all coming up.
So, anyway, he goes to dinner, but like you said, as soon as he gets there, Princess Dalla is like, well, you didn't think that I was going to let you be in my presence without at least 30 other chaperones, did you? Because I know what a shagger you are.
Yeah, I call this dinner Operation Human Shield. It's like,
yeah, and so while this party is happening, Robert Wagner shows up at this resort as well.
Yeah, we find out at this point, because Clouseau is with his wife having drinks at the bar, we find out when he shows up that he is actually the nephew of Sir Charles, which makes Simone choking her drink, and they go, gotta poop, and then she runs off.
Because Robert Wagner is like, say, you're a pretty good looking woman. Have you considered getting naked with a young Robert Wagner before?
Yeah, and Peter Sellers is like, hello. It's like you're right there. Hello, this is my wife. Um,
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot to do at the front end of this movie.
no.
But and Sir Charles ends up seeing Simone in like out the window, like frantically waving at him, and he's like, excuse me, everyone, I have to go potentially have sex with someone.
Well, this comes at a very poignant moment because there's all these stories being regaled about how much of a top shagger Sir Charles is.
Yeah.
And then the princess, like he's being very suave, and she makes those comments specifically to which when he then has to make an excuse to leave, she thinks that she's upset his feelings.
Yeah.
She's not aware that he's actually going outside to try and find Simone, who apparently ran to the window, waved a couple of times, and then just went away.
It just took off. Yeah. Because immediately we cut to from him
Yeah.
leaving to the Clouseau hotel room.
Yeah, where Clouseau is constantly trying to get laid, but
he is
never. He's fucking amazing.
He is DTF the entire movie, and she is like, oh, before we do that, I need you to get some blankets. Oh, and also, can you turn out the lights? Also, I'm probably gonna need a glass of milk.
Yes,
and so after his repeated attempts to climb into bed with her are rebuffed for her laundry list of like,
yeah, he goes to get milk, which is the excuse that she has then to chap on Sir Charles's door. But he goes downstairs to get milk. Fucking amazing. It's the small things. I love really, really silly slapstick humor. He goes downstairs to the kitchen to steal milk, and he comes out and he's trying to make his way back up the stairs, and he thinks he hears a noise, so he leans forward with the glass, which just pours out half the milk.
Yeah.
And then he looks at it and he's like, oh, well, maybe I can clean it with my foot, which just makes it worse. And then he's like, right. And he goes upstairs. By the time he gets back into the room, though, it's a half full glass of milk. And he's like, yeah, they don't really have much milk in this hotel.
He's like, one of the better moments in this movie is her saying, "That's all the milk," and he goes, "It's all that they had."
Yeah,
which is pretty good. But
she chaps on the door. She chaps on the door and like makes her way in, and starts being a little bit like in the bed, all kind of cuddling up to Robert Wagner.
Mm-hmm. Climbs into bed thinking that it's Sir Charles, and Robert Wagner is like, "Say, I didn't realize I ordered a Simone Clouseau," and she's like, "Hey," and it takes off.
Gotta poop.
Right.
And then she's away.
And so Dala also heads up to the room.
Yeah.
To basically apologize for, hey, I'm sorry if I was kind of terrible to you.
Yeah.
And there's a whole scene with them where she ends up getting drunk.
Yeah, she doesn't drink. This is the thing. She doesn't drink, and Sir Charles very, very quickly manages to persuade her to drink champagne, which goes to her head really, really quick. And I to be honest, I really love this scene because Claudia Cardani as a drunk in this is very, very fun. Like when she's lying on top of the tiger skin. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I've got friends, and she's looking at a tiger. Like, they like all this stuff is really charming. But then at the same time, this is 1963. So the insinuation here is this old man is just plying her a drink and then probably going to take advantage of her.
Absolutely. Yeah. And she ends up passing out. And I agree. Like, I think the scene is very charming.
Yeah.
Between her and Niven. And but it also points out like she's 22 or something.
And he
is mid 40s easily.
Yes, and but he doesn't take advantage of her when she passes out. He does the gentlemanly thing to do, because once again we're getting this idea that maybe he does care for her a little bit. Yes. But he tries to bring her through to the bed, but as in bring her through to the bed, I love it. It's kind of classic comedy thing. He's trying to pull her through, but he can't get around. So Robert Wagner comes around to help, and he doesn't clock that it's him. He's like, "Oh, thanks very much." Like this, and he's like, "Like, for what?" And so
Wagner ends up helping Dala into the bed.
Yeah.
While this is going on in the Clouseau bedroom, there is a comedy bit, Duncan,
Yes.
where after he returns with the milk and does the, it's all that the head.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, my head's still hurting. And he's like, I know what will make you better here. And, and pulls out a violin and plays it.
He's trusty.
And he plays it in the same manner that like your third week violin student might. I mean, it's just
it's clearly a nod. Clouseau's an amalgam in lots of. He's a bit of Poirot. He's clearly a bit of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a cat whose tail's been jammed in a tree. It's just horrible.
The best part is when she's like, "No, stop," and he's like, "What? It is not doing the trick." As if it has worked in the past. Yeah, gotten her in the mood.
I do like it's like anything to stop him playing the violin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course I'll have sex with you. Like, let's do it now. I'll put the violin down. Oh man.
And eventually she just proposes that she's gonna take some sleeping pills and he probably should too.
Yeah.
And they're just gonna pass out. So then so that's how everybody ends up that night. The next day, Simone is like finally gets Niven alone.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I was climbing into bed with you last night and there was a stranger there. And he's like, yes, that was my nephew. And Princess Dala has run into Robert Wagner.
Yeah.
And he's giving her a bit about like, I was thinking of going to college or maybe into the Peace Corps. I don't know wherever I can do the most good. And David Niven and Simone show up, and they're all kind of, in the downstairs sort of lounge area. And Dala says, oh, I'm leaving that afternoon. And but first I'm gonna go take some skiing lessons. And Robert Wagner is like, skiing lessons, you say? I've always meant to try those. And so he's gonna go on skiing lessons with Simone.
Well, yeah. He very quickly, Sir Charles manages to circumnavigate this by getting Simone to offer to take him skiing, to get him out of the way, so Sir Charles can once again do Operation Seduction of Princess to get valuable jewels. And he also has to formulate a plan now to get the princess to stay at the resort. Yeah. So because she's going to go, she can't go yet, which then, like, we don't see it, but he obviously gets in touch with the pup napper and basically says, we have to stage it in such a way where, we can keep you here. Thus finishing the I've rescued your dog bit, which is what this whole hijinks bit sets out to. We have Robert Wagner kind of floundering about the place, not knowing what he's doing, but ultimately accidentally getting set off. Turns out he's a really good skier, or accidentally a really good skier, because he goes away down the hill. Simone face plants as Sir Charles is saying goodbye to the princess as she's getting ready to go. He sees the vehicle that, with the guy who stole it. He's like, by Jove, there's the pup napper. I will get him by using this. Once again, he's got a car. I'm going to steal this horse sleigh thing.
Yeah, absolute like Santa and his sleigh.
Yeah, I pursues him there, and he's almost got the pup, but Robert Wagner comes down, floors him, flattens him into the snow, goes across, scares off the pup napper, gets the dog, thus making him the quasi-hero of this scenario, but also keeping the princess at the resort. So failed, didn't work, but the ultimate goal succeeded.
It's really cartoony. This whole sequence is super cartoonish, but then we get the swinging 60s party happening at the lodge.
Where like we just have a woman here who is singing, and we all know the dance, and we're all going to get involved with the
Yeah.
dance. We all know the words.
I mean, it's one of the most like 60s moments of the movie
Oh,
where it's
everyone's
like,
eating fondue. Like
yeah,
everyone has a cheese fondue.
everyone's eating fondue.
I mean,
There's
totally is.
macrame owls on the walls. but yeah,
A
like
sea of lava lamps as far as the eye can.
yeah, but like you said, like everybody starts dancing
Yeah,
along with them, and then after everybody's done dancing, including Clouseau, by the way, who
yeah, he
gets in
gets
on the
involved.
action.
Yeah,
But there's a conversation that Clouseau has with like his police counterparts later, where
he's convinced the Phantom's going to show up.
right,
That's why
because
he's here. He lets like, which explains why he is convinced from evidence he's found somewhere else that the Phantom is there already and is going to do something.
right, and not only is he convinced, the Phantom is not only at this lodge, but maybe in this room.
Yes.
And this is also where Dalla says, well, the current government that runs the country that I fled from has demanded this diamond back,
Yeah.
but I refuse to give it up because this was a gift from my father. This has nothing to do with the country. This was,
Yeah.
a gift from one wealthy person to another wealthy person,
Mm-hmm.
and screw the country. And so Simone and David Niven go dance while Princess Dalla and Robert Wagner also kind of dance together. And that just culminates in Dalla taking off.
Yeah.
And so David Niven is like, hello, nephew. How about you dance with the inspector's wife? I have a
Yeah.
princess to shag. And so he goes off to chase her. And after that, apparently that just leads him further down the road of being into Simone,
Yeah.
because later he ends up placing a crank call to Clouseau's room,
Yeah.
pretending to be this other cop to say like, hey, I need you to come here for some handsome police business.
Yeah. But it's notably in the adjacent town. So
Yes.
he's going to have to leave the hotel and go and be gone for a while.
Yeah.
And that's, this is his play. He thinks, if I can get the hubby out of the room here, I can make my moves with Simone. And she'll fall in love with me because look at me, young Robert Wagner. And of course, as soon as she comes in, Simone's like, listen, we can't do this, mostly because Simone is sleeping with Sir Charles.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to sleep with his nephew. So.
And she goes to Sir Charles to get a little action. And he kind of puts her off. And this is where she's like, oh, you're into Princess Dalla. You're falling in love with her.
Yeah, you're falling in love with the princess. So everything's all over the place. But ultimately, Sir Charles can't get back into his room when Robert Wagner shows up. So he decides to hide under the bed, I think it is.
Yeah, he goes under the bed. Then Clouseau shows back up.
This is the big set piece of this movie in terms of like all the parts coming together, because this feels very much like and it's not, but it feels very much like a one big shot, one big continuous kind of set piece thing.
It's very bedroom farce kind of stuff.
Yes, 100%.
Which is, he shows back up and he's like, the call was a fic. Yeah. And so Simone goes to the bathroom, where she finds that Robert Wagner is hidden in the shower. Niven is under the bed.
Yeah.
The flowers that Robert Wagner shows up with
which is just a vase he's picked from outside, and he just leaves it on the floor.
Yeah. And so that ends up falling and shattering. So a maid shows up to clean that, while David Niven goes from the bed to hide behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Robert Wagner makes his way out, but can't get out in time, so he goes under the bed.
Yep.
So Clouseau then is like, how about a little music? And so, like, his wife is gonna take a bath,
Mm.
He's going to play some music to get her in the mood. And while all this is going down, he kind of spots wet footprints that go from the
Yeah.
bathroom to the bed. While he's checking that out, Niven slips out onto the balcony. Simone calls Clouseau back into the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, like, Robert Wagner gets out the front door, Niven goes out the window, and uh finally, like, Simone has taken her bath. Clouseau is now ready for some action. They jump into bed together. Even though he has seen plenty of suspicious stuff, he's ignoring
Yeah.
all of it. And they're about to get down, and then right before they can, a champagne bottle pops between them.
Which was hidden in the bed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Meanwhile, though, in the other room, though,
yeah,
Robert Wagner's went back in there and he has found his uncle's suitcase, which we can see David Niven seeing through the window of his nephew opening the
yeah,
suitcase, and he finds all this gear and paraphernalia which prove that Sir Charles is none other than the Phantom, which causes him to fall off into a huge like snow mound and walk out in his pajamas, still looking suave and shaggable, doing a bit of this,
yeah.
and then back into the hotel. An
Al-
end scene.
Also, Wagner in before he finds the Phantom stuff gets a call
Yeah.
from Niven's partner.
Yeah, he's like that.
Who tells him that Princess Dala has checked out.
Yes.
So, then, all right, so Inspector Clouseau then gets a call that the dude who stole the dog is actually employed by Sir Charles.
And he's like, aha!
Uh-huh. And
Sir Charles is the Phantom, no?
so Clouseau goes to his door, Sir Charles's door, and David Niven is coming around the corner, spots him at the door, and is like, "Oh no, I've been found out." And so when he goes back to his room, he realizes that his coat is gone.
Yep.
And this was stolen by
Simone.
Yeah, Simone, to give to Sir Charles,
Yeah.
who now escapes from the hotel disguised as Inspector Clouseau.
Yeah.
So then we shift the action to Rome, which is kind of the end of our movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Clouseau ends up catching up with Princess Dala in Rome, where he tells her, like, oh, the Phantom is Sir Charles. And that they're having a big party that night. Clouseau is going to stake out the party with his men because it is too big a target for the Phantom to pass up. So he is certainly going to show up. And then at the party that night, Clouseau dresses up as a knight. And in one of a handful of jokes in this movie that really made me laugh, there's a great moment where he's talking to kind of his second in command, and a zebra strolls up to the table behind them and starts drinking from this punch bowl. And he's like, well, wait a second, who are you? And it turns out that they're, police that have combined to make a zebra. And it's a dumb joke, but it really works for me. It's like, all right, no more drinking for you. You're on duty. Any more of this fooling around, then I'll have your stripes.
Yeah.
It's a real dumb zebra joke, but I don't care. And there's another joke earlier I didn't point out, but it's when he realizes who Sir Charles is, and he calls like the inspector into the room, and he's got his gun pulled.
Yes.
And he's waving it around as he's talking to this other inspector, who keeps grabbing Clouseau's hand to move the gun away from his midsection. And at one point, when he's pushing the gun away, Clouseau goes, "What are you doing? This thing is loaded. Are you trying to get shot?" And it's a good Clouseau joke. So both of those are two solid jokes that made me laugh in this movie.
Yeah.
I'll have your straps. And the thing that I really like about it is that Clouseau is kind of proud of that joke. because
Yeah,
he
yeah,
mentions it to the other guy. Like, I told him I'd take his straps.
yeah.
Anyway, it's very funny. So then, it David Niven and Robert Wagner both show up at this party, both dressed as gorillas, by the way,
Yeah,
identical gorilla outfits, and so they get inside. Despite the fact that it's guarded, but like David Niven's flunky distracts him long enough to sneak past and that kind of thing. And so at this party with our gorillas now there, the
hmm,
lights go out and um they go for the safe. And while people are trying to find lights and so forth, Clouseau gets what he thinks is a candle, but is in fact a Roman candle.
yeah,
Which is the point where you're like, is Clouseau just stupid?
yeah,
And because he, like, it's one, like, it's such a discrepancy, I think, in the character, because on the one hand, you've got him making this stripes joke, which is a really dumb joke, but it's also kind of clever. It's
yes,
wordplay.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
next minute, he doesn't know that this Roman candle spewing gunpowder flame out is not a candle.
yes.
And you're like, ugh, all right, I guess. But sure enough, the Roman candle fires off and goes to it hits the box with the rest of the fireworks. And then all of a sudden, fireworks are going off everywhere,
Yeah.
which creates a distraction long enough for Robert Wagner and David Niven to get to Princess Dala's room, where there is a safe that
Hmm.
has an opening on both sides, and there's this whole mirror bit
Yeah,
where the two of them are opening the safe at the same time and then see each other but think it's themselves and are
yeah,
kind of creeping around the safe and stuff. It's again a very 1960s kind of gag that I
yeah,
don't think totally worked. Um but and then there's another thing that I don't like in movies, which is a great big car chase scene.
yeah. It's the 60s.
Yeah, and so in a very like mad world kind of thing, everybody's got a car.
Yep,
They're doing a roundabout. The one gag that I like about this is they keep passing this one Italian dude as like
yep.
cars are going by with gorillas driving them and Inspector
A lot
Clouseau.
of a lot of what you're seeing in these will be refined in later
And
Clouseau movies. So like, this is weirdly like the first is almost as if they're trying a lot of things at the first run, and the later iterations of the same jokes are much better.
but the gag I like, or the part of this gag I like, is that the Italian guy just goes and gets a chair and
Yeah.
sits down to watch all of this chaos happen. At which point you hear this screech of metal, everybody crashes, and then the camera pans over as you see all these cars smushed together and people
Hmm.
hanging out of the windows and all kinds of. And so Sir Charles and Robert Wagner end up being taken to jail. And that's the point where Robert Wagner tells him, like, oh, yeah, I've been running a scam the entire time, Uncle Charles. Like he basically says he got an apartment in Hollywood and pretended to be a producer or whatever just to get laid a bunch. And it's like, all right, I guess that works.
It's easy as that.
Yeah. And so also and nobody knows who actually took the diamond, because Sir Charles,
Hmm.
by the time Sir Charles and Robert Wagner show up, the diamond's gone. They haven't actually stolen any. So Simone then goes to Princess Dala to tell her, like, hey, if you don't press charges, like, he can get off because he didn't actually steal anything
Hmm.
and you need to help defend him. And that's where Dala basically says, no, 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 I'm the one who stole the diamond, so I didn't have to turn this over
Yep.
to this government that's been after it. And also, she's kind of into Sir Charles and has a plan to save him from prison. And she says, we just have to convince them that somebody else stole this diamond. And so we go to the trial.
Hmm.
Like it's weird because the middle of this movie, the whole second act takes place at this one resort, and it's
Yep.
basically like 2 days
Yep.
at this resort. And then the back end of this, we go to Rome, and then there's a trial and all this stuff.
We
Like,
need to. We need to get this out of here, bro. We need to
yeah,
get them out.
it happens so fast. Like weeks are going by in the space of seconds in this movie. And
Yeah, and it's not a short movie. Well, this is
no,
just
it's a couple
like
hours.
just under 2 hours.
And so at the trial, the defense calls their only witness, who is a very surprised Inspector Clouseau, who asks him a lot of questions about, like, so you were always at the place where the Phantom stole stuff. And he's
Mhm.
like, well, yes, I was hot on his trail. And he's like, were you, or could it be that you yourself are the Phantom? He's like, what? That's ridiculous. And so Clouseau pulls out a handkerchief to like wipe his brow or
Because he's
whatever.
never put his hands in his pockets since Sir Charles had this jacket,
Right.
which
And
was like several countries ago, and apparently the passage of time.
so, right. And this heavy ass diamond that's been in his coat for months
Yeah.
just falls out, and everybody's like, oh my god, you're the Phantom. And so like there's a big riot. Clouseau is taken to prison, where along the way a bunch of women are like, banging on the car and throwing kisses at him and screaming
Yeah.
and stuff. And we see that Simone, Sir Charles, and Robert Wagner are all hanging out, like in a car somewhere, watching all this go down.
Mm-hmm.
And Simone's like, oh, I feel bad that my husband is going to prison. And Sir Charles is like, nah, it's gonna be fun. Listen, darling, as soon as I steal some more shit, they'll realize they don't have the real Phantom.
Yeah.
And and he basically invites Robert Wagner, like, the next big score is going to be in South America. Would you like to come along, handsome Robert Wagner? Sure, Uncle Charles.
Don't know why he said handsome in there, but I am handsome, so yeah, it's accurate.
It's hard to argue. Um, so they're taking Clouseau to prison, and a couple of cops are in the back seat, and they're like, these women are just crazy about you. But as we're on our way, I just have to ask you, how did you actually commit all of those crimes?
Mm-hmm.
And Clouseau, because he is now suddenly the object of lust,
He's not been able to get any in the entire movie.
right? And still is not going to be able to unless there's conjugal visits in his
Yeah, I
future.
don't like it. Well, there's flawed logic here. But
Yeah. When they ask him how he got away with it, he kind of considers it and goes, "Well, it wasn't easy."
yeah.
And so the movie ends.
Boom, boom, boom,
Yeah, like the Pink Panther, the
boom,
animated
boom,
Pink Panther pops
boom.
up and is like, "The end of the movie, everybody," and and that's it. That's the original '63
That's
Pink
the
Panther.
yeah. That is it. That is us done. I mean, the problem with it is
Uh huh.
it's not a very focused movie. It
Yeah.
has it also has it's very lopsided in its humor. Like Clouseau is the entire humor of this movie. It's
Yeah.
his slapstick, his shenanigans, and ultimately like his buffoonery that are all the humor or the farcical aspect of the movie. The rest is played surprisingly straight.
Yeah, I mean, it's got kind of this romance element between Sir Charles and Princess Dala.
Yeah,
There's all the stuff that with Robert Wagner that totally doesn't matter
it doesn't go
in the
anywhere.
grand scheme of this
Yeah,
movie. Um, yeah, it's it's interesting because it, like, when Clouseau and Peter Sellers are on screen, it does feel like a totally different movie.
yeah.
And obviously that is what Blake Edwards realized. And there's a rumor, like, later David Niven was asked about this movie, and was pretty quick to say, like, oh, that was not my movie, that was I was not the star of the Pink Panther. That
He
he was
was
so, yeah,
supposed to be. He was
yeah,
supposed to be, but I think they realised very quickly. Now he'll return. David Niven returns later on in the series, but ultimately, what you get very, very, very quickly is Blake Edwards. Apparently, once again, as the rumor goes, as the rumor machine goes, had set up like he did multiple takes and cameras in various different positions, and he basically told Sellers to ad lib,
yeah,
just like very much like how Jim Carrey does his stuff. Just go like just keep riffing on things, and he found that like Sellers like had an unending supply of funny quirks, things he did, added bits. So they knew they had something there. What is surprising to me is how very, very, very quickly the next movie just grims itself completely in comedy. It's like all the everything is like everything away. It is a slapstick comedy movie from now on. That's
yeah.
the series moving forward, and that is a joy to behold because it knows what it is. This movie struggles because one, it's too long.
Mm-hmm.
Two, like you mentioned, the back third of this movie is essentially jet setting and condensed into like a very short window. Like it's like 20 minutes. We have Rome, the trial, in the end, and a huge bit in the middle, which is, well, so is Sir Charles falling in love with the princess? Who's Simone? And it's a lot of that stuff sets up some gags, but not nearly enough. And yeah, it's one of those movies which weirdly, like, had there been no other movies after this, that would make sense to me. But
Right.
the fact that they did make more movies after this, but focus specifically in on the Clouseau character, that makes sense to me because that's the entertaining part of the movie. That's the bit that you find it's kinetic, it's fun, it's fast paced, and it's all Clouseau doing dumb shit. The transformation of the character into the next movie is just mind blowing though, because it's like his pronunciation of English words like gets incredibly ropey, so he mispronounces words. I'm an officer of the law,
Mm-hmm.
like the law, and the law, which in the UK is the toilet.
Sure.
So it's all that play upon things where like you have a minky on your shoulder. It's like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Like,
What? A minky? All this stuff, which is not in this movie. Like at all, the character completely transforms into the next movie, and that's the stuff that I know for a fact we're going to have a ball talking about because that's not laughs. That's not laughs an hour. It's laughs a minute, Bo.
we shall
So
see. It is, yeah, a shot in the dark is the next thing on our plate.
yeah, so funny,
Which
man. Honestly,
I'm looking forward to seeing. So, all right, let's evaluate our laughs per hour.
yeah.
This I did not find terribly funny.
It's
Uh,
not a particularly funny movie, no.
there were probably 4 total times that I laughed out loud. And it's the stuff that I mentioned, like the milk thing is really funny. The him waving the gun around is funny. The zebra thing is funny, and then something else I'm sure made me laugh. But basically 2 laughs an hour. It's not a great,
Well, no, no,
you
no,
know.
no, not overall, not overall.
Yeah,
I will give you a little bit of trivia if you want, though, which
please,
will
yeah,
give
yeah.
you something to make you smile. Shot in the Dark, next movie we're going to discuss, screenplay co-written by one William Peter Blatty.
No kidding,
Yeah, of Exorcist fame and Exorcist 3: The Heretic.
huh? Well, that
Co-wrote it. Ain't
I
no exorcism in it. There's no mother sucking cocks in hell or anything. It's played right down the middle, but yeah.
I mean,
So
the as Beetlejuice himself once said, The Exorcist keeps getting funnier every single time I watch it. I'm looking forward to that.
yeah,
That'll be, like I said, I can recognize in Sellers' performance,
yeah,
like there are moments where I'm like, man, if you just let him go, this could be very funny. But this just isn't that movie. But it's interesting to see where this starts.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
you get all the characters that will be synonymous with the series moving forward during the next one. I just checked. So Herbert Lom is Charles Dreyfus, who is basically Clouseau's boss, who totally realizes he's the worst cop in the world, but no one else can see how bad he is at his job. So he's going to be in it, and his manservant Cato, who's played by Burt. I can never pronounce his surname. Kwok, maybe, who is absolutely fucking amazing. So those characters are in it as of the next movie. So we are in, Bo. We are fucking in. You're gonna love it. You're gonna laugh lots.
All right.
There's some slightly questionable humor in there as pertains to how certain characters speak about certain races, which hasn't aged very well.
Sure, but again, this is 1964, and we talked about Birth of a Nation earlier. So,
it's nowhere near as bad as that. It's nowhere near as bad. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. I would probably, if we're doing last per hour, I'd probably agree with you. I think there's maybe about 2, at the most 3. I do laugh hard at the really silly slapstick stuff. I think but there's not enough of it in the movie overall. Like the globe gag to me is it gets me every time, because everyone spins a globe, but like how many people would lean on it? She's just disappeared.
His recovery is the thing that's funny about that.
Yes,
the quick pop up
straight up. Nothing
happened.
Yeah.
So again, I'm excited to get deeper into this, but between now and then, Duncan, when we come back in 2 weeks to talk about A Shot in the Dark, a movie that I have 100% never seen.
Oh, I can't wait, man.
So where can people find more out of you? And let me just say, Kreskin-like, I bet it's at teapotscast.com.
It is. That's where links to everything I do is. Podcast on the Stairs, about to, by the time this episode drops formally for the people out there, will have completed its first full week of summer series. So you're getting 4 episodes a week for 10 weeks for summer series. It's going to be an insane amount of content, but it's all great. Bo is on that. So if you like it when Bo talks about stuff with me, you'll be there. He's doing stuff. And then the Teapots Collective is the second feed, which is also available through teapotscast.com. Over there, you can get things like Where to Begin With, which is currently looking at neo-noir and film noir through my suggestions. The movie we're doing on the next episode is Memento, the film debut by one Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, terrific movie.
Great example of neo-noir. We're also doing a little bit of Chronicle over there, which will be coming back real soon with another guest to talk about a European horror movie. Opera Omnia, I've put a pin on purely because summer series is kicking my ass for scheduling. And we're in between seasons, so that's fine. And Down the Nasty, where me and Mark are continuing our look at the Tier 3 Video Nasties list, which is just a kick in the balls every time we record. So there we are.
All right, excellent. And obviously, if you want more out of me, then you can go over to legionpodcasts.com, where you can catch up on Pick 6 movies, where Chad and I are currently doing a season called Crichton the Middle with You, which is all about Michael Crichton movies.
Oh dear.
And
have you done Congo yet?
Oh, that was episode 1 was Congo.
Mr. Hamurka, stop eating my sesame cake.
Man, all right. So here's the thing I did.
Tim Curry's amazing in the movie. He's so good.
Have you seen the clip from the Command and Conquer game? Where it's time to go to one place capitalism cannot find us. Space.
Yeah. So, Tim Curry.
Yeah.
Everything.
I dropped that into the show because I was trying to describe it to Chad, who had never seen it. And I was like, his delivery of the one word space is like 6 syllables. There's all kinds of vowels in it that you would not expect to find. But yeah, so we're doing that. We just dropped the episode on Westworld.
Nice.
The next one will be Timeline, which is
don't know if I've seen that.
Oh, don't. That's a strangely directed by Richard Donner and boring as hell. So
really,
yeah. Did you know
Richard Donner's a fucking great director as well?
He is, but Can you imagine Richard Donner directing a movie with Gerard Butler, Billy Connolly, and Paul Walker, and it is unwatchable?
Billy Connolly's in it.
Billy Connolly is in it.
How have I never heard of this movie?
Dude, the only reason I watched it is because Billy Connolly was in it, and that was a mistake. So yeah, so timeline is coming up on the next episode, and it's a real stink. But Richard Donner is a fascinating dude, and like I'm working right now, in fact, on the introductory piece about Richard Donner.
Oh yeah.
Who's by all accounts was a incredibly nice, talented. So that's going on. Heart of Horror has been tougher to kind of get the regular episodes out, just because of sickness and school and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yep.
But there have still been something every week. Most recently, I would encourage you to listen to the Heart of Horror episode, in which Kate and myself are joined by one of her friends, now hopefully one of mine, a lady named Sabrina, and our discussion of The Crow, aka our discussion of hot goths. And that's all you need to know. It's filthy. And then of course this show. I think that's it.
Did we just do that succinctly? I think
we did. Yeah. So we will be back in 2 weeks to talk about a Shot in the Dark, which is not pornography, as I've recently discovered.
No.
And until then, nothing left for me to do but to say to my good pal Duncan, say goodnight, Duncan.
My good pal Duncan, say goodnight, Duncan.
Oh, that is not right.
There is a minky on your shoulder, man. Can't wait, man. I cannot wait.
There's always a minky on my shoulder.
Oh, dear.